How do you do, fellow edgy teens? Do you want to hear a very popular internet horror story that you have never heard before? I will even narrate it for you, for free, without any of those very wonderful YouTube ads. And when I am done narrating that horror story, you will laugh, pee your pants. The narration will commence when I cue the song for you. I will cue a popular song that only 0.01% of internet users have heard of. I don't even know who the actual composer is. So I am very certain that you, today's listener, most likely haven't heard of him and his songs in your entire lives. But enough about that. Let us proceed to my 100% original creepypasta story, and don't pee your pants. I remember what time of the year it was. It was that time of the year again. It was time to prepare for Halloween. I was preparing on a Friday, the 13th, 21X. It was on a breezy day of October. I remember cleaning up and preparing my room for Halloween. I polished the windows, dusted the floor, moved old stuff down the cellar, and then I found it. In the wardrobe, a box labeled old stuff. I opened it, and inside, I found it, after all these years, our old family PlayStation 1. Upon seeing it, I got a sudden flashback bomb of memories of me and my brother and other family members playing all 4 Crash Bandicoot games in the late 1990s. I remember it was a time when televisions were all boxy. But anyways, getting back to the here and now, 21X. In this box of old stuff, I found it at last, our old family PlayStation 1. The games were in there too. Excited, I hooked it up on my 1080p flat screen TV. I turned everything on and nothing. All I got was a blue screen of nothingness and some statics. Oh well. And so I unhooked everything and put that broken PlayStation 1 back in that box, and then I moved it down to the cellar. But not the games. I kept the games because I learned through the internet that I can play my PlayStation 1 games on my PlayStation 3. With a few hiccups, like the soundtrack can sometimes be out of sync or skip. It is a little bit scary when it does that, but that's fine by me. That's fine. The games mostly work, and after I played Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped for 1 hour, I then continued to clean and prepare my room for Halloween. Halloween, in that month of October, went very well. And after that, life moved on as usual. The end. And that's it for my well-written, award-winning creepy story. You can all pee your pants now. As for my stellar narration and writing, I think I'll pick up my Oscar on my way out. Thank you. Okay, me trying to be funny aside, let us move on to the main topic, yes? Now, if I went around to, let's say, 10 random internet users in their 20s, and then I asked them about creepypastas and the community that surrounds it, then I speculate there would be a good chance that 7 out of 10 of those people would bring up its very prominent character. Slender Man. He was, after all, created, or rather written, all the way back in 2009 on the Something Awful forums. He has many fans all over the world, all over the internet. You could even say that, in a way, he is like a mascot for the whole thing, especially for all the non-gaming pastas. If there was a written down story about him, or about any other unrelated creepypastas on the internet, then there would be somebody on YouTube to narrate it, like Creepypasta, or to put Slenderman in their top number list, like top 5s, or to play the fan games, Slenderman the 8 pages, like PewDiePie or Markiplier. Though I myself was not much of a fan of Slenderman back in the days, I did enjoy watching PewDiePie and Markiplier play Slenderman the 8 pages. Though I was not much of a fan of Slenderman back in the days. Back then, I was more into the video game related creepypastas like Ben Drowned, Lavender Town Syndrome, Sonic.exe and many more. I was also a fan of the SCP Foundation and its wiki. I remember listening to YouTubers narrating those stories and playing the fan games. Great times. I remember back in the early 2010s how I used to subscribe to a good amount of creepypasta related YouTubers. That's Tough Videos, Some Ordinary Gamers, Sticky Paddle, and then in the mid 2010s, Scare Theater came into the picture. The tail end of the 2000s, all the way to the late 2010s, was an era on YouTube that I call the creepy era of YouTube. I remember that era. I was a very young adult back then, and I was still attending school. The creepy era of YouTube was pretty much at its apex when I graduated in the mid 2010s. But for me, in my experience with that era, from when I was first introduced to it and when I got tired, was in the early to mid 2010s. My earliest memories of that era was in the early 2010s when I watched Tat's Top Videos as well as Some Ordinary Gamers Haunted Gaming series, where Some Ordinary Gamer would narrate various of gaming creepypasta stories. I remember I thought it was very interesting back then. So, at the tail end of the 2000s, all the way to the mid 2010s, YouTube had a wave of all kinds of users uploading all kinds of creepy contents left and right. Let's plays, narration, top list, fan animation, and etc, etc, etc. Some people jumped on the creepypasta bandwagon, and some people just did it for fun. And with these creepy contents being uploaded on YouTube left and right, there is a reoccurring theme song in a lot of those contents. A lot of those creepy contents that I've seen and heard on YouTube are using the same royalty-free songs composed by pretty much by the same person, Kevin MacLeod. I hope I said his last name correctly, by the way. If I didn't, I apologize 100 million times. He is pretty much the go-to guy for royalty-free music for a lot of content creators in general, and not just for creepy contents. Or he was at one point, or maybe still is. I mean, if you go to YouTube Studios, then you will see that Kevin MacLeod is no longer the only royalty-free composer on the platform. You can even download royalty-free sound effects now. But even though Kevin MacLeod was the go-to guy for a lot of YouTubers, other kinds of royalty-free songs and composers did exist aside from him back then. Sometimes I would find a creepy content that did use a song that was not composed by him, but from my point of view, it was a rare occurrence. Now, I hope I am not derailing too much from creepypastas right now, but the music that is composed by Kevin MacLeod is not just all over YouTube, but is pretty much all over everything, essentially. You could even say that his music is the official soundtrack of the internet, and not just for creepy contents or YouTube. I've lost count with the amount of times I heard his songs. YouTubers / content creators all over the world have used his songs, at least in one of their own projects. As far as I know, his songs go back all the way to the late 2000s, predating Slender Man. I've even found his songs in video games too. Oh, how do you say this? How do you say this? Echelon? Escalon? Book 1 and 2. Aside from me personally thinking these are great indie games, by the way, let us get back on track with creepypastas, yes? Now, the feedback that the creepy community and its stories got from back then was relatively positive, especially in the beginning, but the older that I get, the more I start to realize that everything and everyone are going to have those humiliating moments in their lives, and creepypastas are no different. There are two very awful actual real-life incidences that have an indirect connection to creepypastas in a way. On the 4th of June 2014, I watched Review Tech USA's video report on those two 12-year-old girls that tried to off their third friend for Slender Man. Those two girls self-deceived themselves into thinking that he was real, and they thought they could appease him and become his real-life proxies, and so those two girls lured their third friend into the woods and stabbed her multiple times, and then they left her to her fate. Now, fortunately, the girl survived, and those two perpetrators got caught. Yes! If I remember the trial with what the judges said correctly, one of those 12-year-olds has been tried as a juvenile and will be released around the age of 20 or 35, but the other one has been tried as an adult and will be released around the age of 40 or 55. Now, the other unrelated humiliating moment for creepypastas is the reoccurring image of Jeff the Killer. There has been many speculations surrounding this image right here you see on screen. This image is said to come from a girl that allegedly offed herself because of cyberbullying or something like that. And I say allegedly because I actually don't know, but either after or before she offed herself, her face was uploaded on 4chan, and some people on the board photoshopped her image in different ways, and one anonymous user photoshopped her image like this, and then later on that photoshopped version 1 image got turned into this iconic image of Jeff the Killer. So the story goes. By the way, I am not so sure if version 1 was done by the same user or a different one. The origin story of Jeff the Killer's face has been going back and forth, so I'm not so sure anymore. There are probably a few more horrible real-life incidences that have had an indirect connection to creepypastas, but I can only think of these two right now. This is what I've been trying to say with creepypastas have had some humiliating moments, sadly, and incidences like these can have an effect on some everyday creepy users. Incidences like these can turn some people off. Now, I am not so sure how other people felt or feel about those two awful real-life incidences. Like I said, this could have turned some people off and driven them away. I mean, that's how some people felt when a certain World War II dictator turned a lot of people off by sporting a toothbrush mustache and doing the Roman salute. Because sadly, in today's environment, if you see someone doing those two aforementioned things, then a lot of people will think of that World War II dictator, sadly. This is why I believe the style of the toothbrush mustache fell out of favor, as well as the name Adolf. Now, as I was saying about those two real-life stories, I can't speak for other people, I can only speak for myself. And when I heard of those two stories, I just, oh my god, I couldn't help but cringe. They made me feel very awful inside. Now, those two incidents aside, and as the years went by, fast forward to, I'd say, 2017 or 2019, I couldn't help but notice that creepypastas slowly declined in its popularity. Because, you know, some people felt like they wanted to grow out of it and move on with their lives, or move on with something else. Yes, there will still be Let's Plays and narrations on YouTube from time to time, but I don't know, it doesn't seem to me like a lot of people nowadays go crazy for it. Creepypastas in the here and now, 2021, aren't as popular as they were back in the days. There will still be a few people on YouTube that will upload creepy content from time to time, but not at the same pace as it used to be back then. From my interpretation, the Creepypasta era was like a new pair of shoes. That era may have been hip and cool at one point, but in the here and now, that era is out of style, apparently. In my opinion, the Creepypasta era on YouTube was a very interesting time. Some people grew out of it and moved on, and some people decided to stay behind and nurture it even further to this day. But one should not deny or ignore that it did leave a mark on the internet and has now been immortalized for the rest of history. And so, the moral of this story, or rather, what my takeaway is with all of this, is that online scary stories can be fun in games and all, but it's not fun anymore when someone starts bleeding. Has the creepy era on YouTube / the internet run its course? Or is it still ongoing to this day? Or is the genre just as hip as cool as it used to be back then? I do not know what the future has in store for creepypastas and its fans. Only time will tell. To be concluded. How about you guys? Today's listeners? What are creepypastas to you? Were you fans of them back then? Were you a fan of those stories back in the days? Do you have a favorite? Or did you not care? Or are you too young to remember? What is your takeaway with all of this? Do you think creepypastas are just as cool and hip as they were back in the day? Or is the creepypasta era officially over? Please, tell me your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section below. Bye bye.